Alrighty, Chair. So today we're starting with civilization, and this is where things start to get exciting, and I'm super thrilled that we can be here. So we're going to start with the ancient Near East. We're going to start with the ancient Mediterranean. So this starts with the earliest cultures of Mesopotamia, and then it's going to go all the way through Greece and Rome. This unit of study, but we're going to break it down into smaller chunks for your convenience. So today we're just doing Mesopotamia. Okay. Societies organize elements of their experience in pictorial and architectural form. And storytelling is going to now enter into art, and storytelling that we're going to be able to understand. They may have been doing some storytelling before, we don't know. But now we know what's going on because we can read their stories. So they're going to organize pictures and architecture in a new way. So I just want you to look at these comparisons. Okay, architecture changes when we get a written record. Okay, take a look at these things, these two. How does it change? Okay, what changes? They're both enormous, they're both huge. But what changes when we can read and write? Okay. They become less freeform. This is much more organic. This is much more geometric. Okay. Also, we get a sense of this was created over a period of 1,000 years. These were the Great Pyramid here in the back. The Great Pyramid was created. Let me grab my laser pointer. The Great Pyramid here was constructed in 20. And for most of human history, this has been the tallest building on the planet. Okay, so what's changed? We've gotten bigger, much bigger. Well, these are big. These are so much bigger. They've taken on a regular shape, a geometric shape, a man-made looking shape as opposed to organic ones. They're going to be able to be done quicker. Okay. All because we invent writing. Now, painting is going to change too. We'll look at the running horned woman. Okay. We get hierarchical scalings. We get the overlapping, the twisted perspective. Okay. But the meaning is not entirely clear. Whereas this, we're getting, it's much more organized. It's much more regular. Again, more organic, more free form. This is more geometric and more ordered. And again, we've gotten the written language that's telling us exactly what's happening here in this scene. Okay? And it's also on more, I don't want to say sophisticated materials, but it's on materials that take more preparation. Let's put it that way. These were materials that took little processing. These materials took more processing to create, so they could create with them. Okay, that's going to change. Sculpture is going to change too. We're going to go from small handheld things to much larger things. Again, more organic, more geometric, and larger. All right? Now, the theme for this is power and control. You're going to want to write this down. In your notebook, if you open up the cover, you'll see there is a timeline here on the very first page. The timeline has all of the pieces and the cultures and where they're found on the planet. So where they're found, the cultures within that geographical area, and then the pieces we're looking at. And over to the right, there is a blank space for a theme, the overarching theme of these pieces. And we're going to be talking about that theme every time we begin a new culture. Okay, so for the theme of Mesopotamia, so Mesopotamian art, I want you to write power and control. Okay, so go ahead and write that in here, power and control. So that's the lens that we're going to be looking at these pieces. How are these pieces used to create and maintain power and control? All right? Key things about the ancient Near East, they're going to bring art into the service of the state and religion. Okay? And we've got our first writing system that's going to tell us about society. They're going to build out of mud brick because stone is hard to come by. So they're going to take the mud, schlep it into forms, dry them in the sun, bake them, and then build with them because that's what the material that they have available. So what that does is that allows pieces to deteriorate rather over time. The things in Egypt, for example, are longer lived because they're made out of stone. The things in Mesopotamia were made out of mud brick, so they didn't last as long. All right. Mesopotamia, as we're going to see, doesn't have any natural boundaries between the lands, and so they're going to develop a warlike societies, especially that's going to culminate there with the Assyrians. Animal-human hybrids, we're going to see those in spades because, again, when you mix the animal and the human, you get the divine. Okay, they have attributes, we've got attributes. When you put them together, you get something even better. And these are the pieces that we're going to talk about. Okay, some of them may look familiar. You may have seen this guy already. You may have seen this guy. Maybe not. But these are the pieces that we're going to talk about today. So here in Mesopotamia, which means the land between the rivers, meso, between, middle, the rivers. Okay, and the rivers that we're talking about are the Tigris and the Euphrates. So it's today modern-day Iraq and Kuwait. So Kuwait's down here, Iraq is up here, with a little bit of present-day Syria. All right. Now we're going to start down here. Now, anciently, the Persian Gulf extended further up. Okay, this has all been filled in down the centuries, where the Tigris and Euphrates come together and empty into the Persian Gulf as one river. Anciently, they entered separately about here, and through the centuries, the silt and stuff has built up and extended the land. So we're going to start down here in what is Sumer. Then we're going to move up to Babylon. Next time, we'll be doing Assyria and the Akkadians. And then over here, we're going to talk about the Persians. Okay? So today, Sumer and Babylon. So we're going to move up northwest. So again, like I said, they don't have any natural barriers between the nations. They're going to, that's going to lead to them fighting up and down the Fertile Crescent. Okay, so we're going to start in Sumer. If you haven't watched the video on the Axis Mundi yet, it's linked below. Make sure that you watch it and know what that is, because that's going to become important right now. So we're going to move over here into Iraq to this piece. Okay, and you can see from my little icon here, the world tree, that this is an Axis Mundi. All right, we've got the White Temple and its Ziggurat. And you look at it and you think, it looks like a mountain. I can see some steps, and it looks like a hill. Maybe there's something like this, maybe. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about. The mud brick deteriorates over time. So there isn't much left of the White Temple and its Ziggurat. Okay, it's found in Uruk, the city of Uruk. It's Sumerian, 3500 to 3000 BCE, and again, it's made out of mud brick. So you want to make sure that you fill in your timeline on the right hand of your notes. And here's another view. So it's pretty deteriorated. If you were driving past this, I don't know that we would recognize this as the remains of a building, even, because it is so deteriorated. All right. This is an artist's reconstruction of what it would have looked like. So this is a drawing of what it would have looked like. So we got the ziggurat and the white temple up top. The ziggurat is going to be a step pyramid. Okay? Now this is a really early one. They're going to get more complicated as we move down through the centuries here in Mesopotamia. But a ziggurat is a stepped pyramid in Mesopotamia. Now you can see that they've got these channels, okay, the buttresses. That's to help channel water when it rains. Okay? Again, 3000 BCE, it did rain more than it does there today. And then we've got the temple up top. It's designed to mimic a mountain. So let's go back. Look at the shape of the mountain, general shape of the mountain. Let's look at the shape of the ziggurat and the temple. It's designed to look like a mountain. And that plays into the idea of, again, speaking to God. Okay? This guy, if you don't know who this guy is Moses. Moses was the person from the Bible, the Judeo-Christian text, that's going to lead the people of Israel out of Egypt. And when he does, they're going to stop on the way back to what is today Israel. They're going to leave Egypt, head up north, back into Israel. On their way, he's going to stop and talk to God. Now, the place that he's going to do that is a mountain. Okay? You want to get on a mountain to talk to the gods because they're physically closer to the sky. Okay? And that's going to be super duper important. So if you need to talk to the gods, you climb a mountain to get up because you're physically closer to them. Because remember, we're doing that three-tiered universe thing. If you wanted to commune with the dead, you would go into a cave because you're going down into the earth. But if you want to commune with the gods, you climb a mountain so that you can get closer. Because remember, the sky is literally where God lives in ancient cultures. So that's what Moses was doing, climbing the mountain. He was trying to get literally closer to God. Okay? So here is a reconstruction, a three-dimensional reconstruction of that white temple and its ziggurat. So again, you're getting that sense of that step pyramid here, that broken pyramid. So you would have climbed the steps and come up. Now, here's something that to the temple sanctuary proper. Now, here's something that's really important to understand. These were not built to be for communal worship. Okay, you did not come up, you didn't come to church here. You didn't worship up here because you don't get to climb this. This becomes the sacred mountain. You don't get to climb the sacred mountain and talk to the gods. If you are nobility, okay. If you're priesthood, yes. But you cannot access it if you are a common person because you would be struck dead. You can't get close to God. You're not special enough. Does that make sense? So you would not come up here. You would not go inside. You would send offerings and you would pay to have it maintained, but you would sacrifice your time and animals, but you would not go here to worship. Okay. So again, we're seeing kind of this. I wish I could spin this around so for you to see it. Now the inside, let's zoom in here. Okay, here's the temple proper. So you can see that it's not got a lot of windows, and that's important because plate glass hasn't been invented yet. Plate glass isn't going to be invented for till we get to the Romans, really. So they're not going to have windows like glass windows. So you don't want windows that are going to be super big because things fly in. Okay, and when we cut it open, we can see that it's really actually quite small by today's standards. And it has a place to enter and has a place for offerings. Okay? And that's kind of about it. If we go to the next view, this is again a closed view of what it would have looked like. There's an entrance and a place for offerings. And they would have, oops, let me go back. They would have also had a place for statues, okay, for votive figures. And we're going to talk about those votive figures here in a minute. But yeah, this is it. This is a place where the priests came to speak with the divine, to make those offerings, to make that connection with the gods. The gods of Mesopotamia, should be noted, are not benevolent. They are the forces of nature. And the forces of nature, as we know, are not always kind. Sometimes they are. Sometimes they're not. So you got to appease them to make sure that you are in harmony with them. Okay? We're going to watch this little clip. It's just like a 3-minute clip, but it's just going to guide us through an ancient Mesopotamian city. Now, this is going to be a later ziggurat that they're going to show us, so it's a little more impressive than the White Temple. Or not. Let's try that again. There we go. Okay, this demonstrates here, right here, something that's very important that we're going to see played out anciently. Because this is the axis mundi, because this is the center of heaven, earth, and the dead, where all the worlds come together, it becomes the center of society. They're going to build up their civilization around it. So around here, everything else is going to sit at the center, and around here, everything else is going to grow up. And we're going to see commerce, trading. People are going to come to the ziggurat for trade, to buy, to sell, to congregate, to mingle. Okay, right here, it's the crossroads of their city-state. Again, like Salt Lake City. Salt Lake City was designed exactly like this, in the fact that it's right there in the middle of the heart of the city, it's the heart of the valley, and everything radiates out from it. And you've got commerce, you've got business, you've got all kinds of things, entertainment, all right there, right next to the center of the city. You come there, and everything else just radiates out from it. Again, priests would have walked these steps, and this is, again, a much bigger ziggurat. Priests would have walked the steps, climbing the mountain to talk to the gods, to appease them. Again, not for congregational worship. And at the top here, you're seeing offerings. You're seeing these little statues. That's going to become important later. Again, designed to look like a mountain. Cool little animation. Okay, so here are our notes. Okay, and I want you to, and these notes have already been taken for your convenience, so go ahead and pause the video. I want you to go through here, highlight, and underline the important things. I do need to point out, again, this is oriented, the White Temple and its ziggurat is oriented toward the cardinal directions. Okay, it is dedicated to the sky god Anu. 40,000 people would have lived in this city. That's a big city, especially right at the beginning of the world. Um, yeah, okay. Resembles the mountain. Again, pause, read, annotate. Okay. Now, staying in Iraq, we're going to get statues. Okay, now the statues that we're looking at here are emblematic of their whole class. So the White Temple is a very specific building, whereas these statues that I'm showing you are emblematic of all of them. So the votive figures, a votive figure relates to devotion, okay, faith. If you look at them, again, Sumerian 2700 BCE, gypsum, which is a softer stone inlaid with shell and limestone. If we take a look at these, what are they doing? What do you see? Just take a second, jot down. This is piece number 14. Turn the page. Just jot down in your notebook. What are some of the things that you see? Okay, hopefully you can tell that there's a difference of gender, that there are female figures and there are male figures. Some of the males have beards. Not all of them have beards, but some of them do. Okay. He also does not have hair, and I have a guess as to what the story is with this guy. We've got hierarchical scaling. Okay, some are bigger, some are smaller. The women have a shawl, or their tunic goes up over one shoulder, whereas the men are bare-chested. They all have kilts, tunics. Okay. Most of the men, again, have these braided coiffures, these braided hairs, braided beards. They all have very large eyes. Look at the prominence of the eyes. That's very, very important. And they would have been inlaid with stone. Mouths, small. Notice the placement of their hands. What are they doing? Okay, that's important because we still do this today. It's so funny that we see these, the attributes of our society reflected here at the very beginning of the world. What they're doing is what you think they're doing. Okay? And here you can see the eyes a little bit clearer. Again, they're huge for a very specific reason. Okay. They're praying. Why do we affect this pose when we pray? Okay? The same reason, well, we do it because they did it. Because this is the attitude of prayer that's come down to us through the millennia. This is how a person in the West prays. This is how they address the divine. And how do you address the divine? The attitude of the Mesopotamians was of a servant or a slave to a master. You are begging for your life. Essentially, when you address the divine, you're begging for mercy because it is the relationship of master and slave. All right, and that's what this attitude means. Okay, it's the relationship of master to slave, and so the power dynamic. There, see power and control. Know your place. Know your place in society. You are below the gods and below the people at the top. Okay. Now, what these figures are for. Again, you cannot go into the Ziggurat. you can't go into the temple to pray to the gods because you can't access them. You'd be struck dead if you tried to enter by the divine, divine lightning would smite you. So what you do is you purchase a votive figure. Depending on your station in life, is what you can afford. If you're more important, you can afford a bigger one. And it prays for you. You give it to a priest, you buy it, you pay for it, you give it to a priest, they install it in the temple, and then it has your name written on it, and they pray for you. So that's why their eyes are so huge, because you want whoever is praying for you to never fall asleep. If they fall asleep, then you might fall out of divine favor. So you're going to stay open, alert, and humble before the gods. Okay? You're addressing them as master. Does that make sense? So you use these figures to pray in your stead, because because they're not mortal, see? They can enter the presence of God. You can't. And so they are allowed to look upon the gods. And so that's what's happening here. Now, none of the figures, again, the notes have been taken for your convenience, so I do want you to pause the video and highlight and annotate. Now, it should be noted that none of these have been found in situ, and the word in situ means on the site. Okay? What it means is that none of these have been found actually within the temple proper. And if we look back at the White Temple, you can see because it's not there. Okay? These have been found buried on the temple sites. Now, what happens, and this is the answer why. Okay? What happens when a person has died and no longer needs the figure to pray for them? What they would do, because the statue has been sanctified, it's been in the presence of the gods, it's been in the holy place, they can't just get rid of it, because it can't, now that it's been sanctified, it can't leave, it can't go back out into the mundane world. So what they're going to do with it is bury it on the temple site. So it's still on holy ground after the person has died, because they don't need prayers anymore. But you can't just throw this thing away because it's sacred. So you got to put it in a sacred spot. So none of these have been found in situ. They have only been found buried in groups under the floor for that reason. Okay. Now the ear is a double volute, and if you were in class, I would draw this for you. A volute is a scroll. I wish I had a drawing device here, because I would show you that it's a scroll. I don't think I don't have one so you can see it. We'll see these later. So hang on to the idea of the double volute. We'll come back to that. Okay, those are the votive figures, if you've got any questions about those. All right. Now our next piece is the standard of Ur. Okay, Ur is another city. Again, these cities that the Mesopotamians, the Sumerians are building are called city-states. Okay, each city is going to have its own centralized government. The standard of Ur is Sumerian, again, modern-day Iraq, 2600 BCE. It's made out of wood and shell, lapis, which is this blue stone, and red limestone. Okay? Here's what it looks like. It actually looks like. All right? And if we check back here then, so what we're seeing here are the two sides. It's a box. It's a box. And they think it was perhaps a box, a sounding box, or a resonating chamber for an instrument. But we're not really sure what this was exactly for. But that's our best guess, is that we think that it's a resonating chamber for instruments. So on the one side, you're getting a peace narrative, and on the other side, on the reverse side, you're getting a war scene. Okay? Now, lots of these characteristics that we've talked about previously are going to come into play. You can see that it's broken into, like the bushel with ibex motifs, or the beaker with the ibex motifs, it's broken into registers. Okay? So if that is not, let's see if this is listed for you. Yeah, it is. Circle that, highlight that, underline that here in your notebook under form, that it's broken into registers. And so it's supposed to be read like, organized in this comic book kind of way. All right. So on the war side here, we're seeing down at the bottom, we're seeing the wagons and the chariots, and they're trampling their opponents. The Sumerians are trampling their opponents. Notice the convention of how you show multiple horses. They just show them exactly like bam, 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 all lined up. All these 4 horses, or 2 horses, they're all lined up so that bam, 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 and they're mimicking each other's movements. It's kind of charming. You're seeing in the middle register the figures, the soldiers, the orderly soldiers of the Sumerians, fighting, gathering, corralling the victims, the losers. And you can see that the losers are being driven on hands and knees, and over here they're driven on their feet. But you can also see that they've been disrobed. They're naked. They're having their clothes taken away to humiliate them. Again, power and control. How does this represent power and control? It represents it by showing order, the order of the storytelling, but it also does it by, we recognize that as in society, you can't go about without clothes. We find that embarrassing, okay? And so as to humiliate them, they take away their clothes. Now, the captives are being surveyed by the king here. We know he's the king because he's taller than everyone else. He breaks the register. His head goes above the register, okay? Hierarchical scaling. So these would have been in shell and limestone, and the blue stone is lapis lazuli, okay? Now, these are materials not native to southern Iraq, okay? Here we've got the peace side, where you're having tribute, grain, animals, livestock, all being brought to the king, who's feasting. Here's the king again. Again, he's breaking the register. He's feasting with nobles. Again, you can see there the men are topless with their kilts. They look just like the votive figures. Here's a guy playing instruments. He's playing a little harp. All right. And so this then is the peace side. So it creates this dichotomy of war, chaos, versus order, peace, but also the chaos of the opposing sides versus the order of the Sumerian side. So it's a propaganda piece too. All right, here's a close-up. Here's the guy where he's got, he's being driven forward on his hands and knees. His clothes have been taken off. Okay. Beaten forward. The lapis is that blue stone from Afghanistan. All right. And the red is coming from India. Like this guy carrying the fish here. That's charming. Okay, here are the double volute ears. Here's what I'm talking about. The double volute ears. So the votive figures had this as well. Okay? That's a volute, is a scroll thing. And a double volute means it's got this. There's 2 of them. And so they're just simplifying the ears. Now you can see how the figures are being formed. You can see how the figures are being depicted. They're depicted in what we'd call, again, a twisted perspective. They've got their chests out, but their heads to the side, but their eyes or to the side as well. We're looking at the eye front on, but it's on plastered on the side of their head, and their legs are also being shown in profile to make it easier to understand, easier to render. All right? So this is the actual size of the standard divert. It's not very big. And that's why we think it's easy to look at that original picture and say, oh, that's a massive thing. No, it's tiny. It's very small. So that's why we think it could have been, again, the box, a resonating chamber for a musical instrument. Okay? A very, very richly decorated one. So again, what I'm saying to you is that the materials were coming from all over the ancient world. So what we're getting there is understanding that they had an extensive trade network. They had this ability to network and to trade across vast, vast distances, which is really impressive, again, because they are the first society that we know about. Okay. Take a moment, read through the notes, highlight, annotate. Okay. Now moving on to Babylon. This is our last piece. In Babylon, which is just northwest of Sumer, the Babylonians are going to come and conquer. They're going to move south, conquer Sumer. So this is ancient Babylon. You can see at its center, again, the Ziggurat. Here's the Ishtar Gate. The blue is not lapis. The blue is glazed. They're glazed tiles. Again, power and control. Look at as you move into the city, like that giant blue impressive gate. Wow, how it's supposed to awe you and fill you with wonder. You're seeing the animals that they have power over. So exciting. Hanging gardens. Pulling in water from the Euphrates River to make these gardens grow. One of the wonders of the ancient world. And this is the Ziggurat, which would have been known as the Tower of Babel. Again, the idea of the story of the Tower of Babel building a building tall enough to actually physically touch the sky, because that's where the gods live. That's the story. That's the Ziggurat on the Euphrates River, the center of their society. It's a cool animation. So you can see as the camera pans around that Iraq is kind of flat. Okay, there are mountains, but the central plain of Mesopotamia is flat. It's cool. Okay, this is the the Stele of Hammurabi. And this is our final piece. So this represents power and control in a number of ways. Okay. This is piece number 19. Now, this piece does not have the notes taken, so we are going to want to, if you look in your notebook, it is completely blank, so you are going to want to jot down notes for this piece. Okay, as we see this piece, we can see that it's a pillar, it's a stele, just like we talked about with the anthropomorphic stele. It's a rock that's been decorated, has these figures on the top, okay, and the laws are written. This becomes significant because it is the first written law system in the world. So our idea of knowing what our laws are comes back to Babylon, comes back to this. All right. Now, as we look at, let's take a closer look at the imagery up at the top. We see this guy here, this figure. All right. He's handing off a ring and a rod to this guy. Now he's got this ice cream cone hat. What these are horns. This is the sun god, right? This is Shamash. And we know he's the sun god because he's got fire. This is fire coming off of his shoulders. Sun god, and he's got animal horns. He's got this big beard. He's sitting on top of what is a false door, okay? It's the gateway to heaven. It's the entranceway to heaven. That if you're divine, you can pass through this inscribed door here, this incised door. And his feet are on top of the ziggurat. All right, he's handing off building materials, things that you would use to construct a building, to the king Hammurabi. So what this is represent is he's giving authority to build society. And Hammurabi is showing us that he has been appointed by the gods to rule in their stead as their mortal agent. He's ascended the mountain to speak with the gods. And the gods are rewarding him for his faith and devotion by giving him the keys, the powers, the rights to order earth. And this is written the will of the gods. And this is what he says to him, to us. Does that make sense? Okay. Now, if we take a look at this thing from these sculptures from the front, we can see these horns. See how they've got the same ice cream cone hat? That's really what it is. They're horns that are terminating in the front. They've got multiple sets of horns to show their power. So this guy, he's got 4 horns, so he's super important. All right. Now compare this. This is from the Shamash tablet. Compare how is it similar, how is it different. Okay, we've got, again, the rod and the ring, building materials, passing on. All right, so this is what's called a bas-relief. We talked about this at the beginning, but a bas-relief means that it's a sculpture that you can't walk all the way around. It's attached on one side of the wall. It's in Akkadian, and it's read right to left, okay? They're using a twisted perspective. There are 300 laws written down below the figures, and they're symbolically given from Shamash, the god, to Hammurabi. And it's the earliest law code written that we have. Shamash is enthroned on the ziggurat. He offers Hammurabi the rod, the rope, and the ring of authority. And he's got a bigger beard than Hammurabi. If you notice that if he stood up, he'd also be taller. So we've got some hierarchical scaling here as well. He speaks, he greets him in a gesture of greeting. In his lifetime, then, Hammurabi connected the cultures of Mesopotamia. Okay, he took Babylon, it was a small, just city-state, and he took it to an empire. Right? That's what he's done. Now, here I am. I got the chance. This is housed at the Louvre, and I got the chance to see it. It's big. It's bigger than I thought it would be. But hopefully you can see that it represents another way that it represents power. And it represents power in a bunch of different ways. And we're going to talk about these. Okay? It is phallic. which means it represents a penis. Okay, it is in that shape, and it's doing that to represent male power. All right, it represents the authority, the power of men over women, essentially. It also represents literacy. If you can read these laws, you're still responsible to know them, but if you can read them, then you've got power over the people who don't. Okay, so you have to be able, like, it's a class thing. If you've got class power, if you're part of the elite, you can actually read this text, which most people can't. So it represents class power. The king has legal power, again, and he's been given the divine right to rule all of Mesopotamia, right? He's been given the power of civilization, the power to civilize these other societies. And Shamash, again, is representing divine power. He's the source of it all. He's solar power. He's the sun, and he's got that animal-human hybrid power, too. All right? So that's the Stele of Hammurabi. You're going to want to write this stuff down, write this down, okay, in your notes. And these are our pieces. How did they reflect the idea of power and control? Okay, make sure you jot that down in your notes as well. All right, and that's it for today. Hope you understood. If you've got any questions, shoot me an email, and I'll get back to you.